Welcome to Vermont Artists and Authors, where we interview great storytellers and artists from the amazing Green Mountain State. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're honored to have with us the nationally acclaimed writer and celebrated historian, Paul Andriscin. Hey, Paul.
How you doing?
How you doing? Good. How you doing?
I'm doing well. It's a beautiful rainy day here in Rutland. So what else is new? One of those deals.
Yeah, but at least last weekend we didn't have rain, so that
No,
was a positive.
no, that
Yeah.
was a good positive. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You're a retired history professor for
Yes.
pretty much every state university in Vermont you've worked at.
Well, almost, not quite, but close. In the central part of the state. Let's put it that way.
And you're here to talk a little bit about your latest book, the Memoirs of Isaac Kendall, Soldier of the
Yes.
Revolution, 1776, 1777. So, Paul, my first question to you is, where did your idea come from for writing Memoirs of Isaac Kendall?
Okay. Well, I've been one of the site interpreters over at Mount Independence since 1998.
Okay.
Now, it is an amazing American Revolutionary War site. We don't have any rebuilt buildings there except for the museum, which went into 1996. And it is all archaeological sites. It is a graveyard. There's thousands of people that are buried there that you just don't realize when you're walking the trails. We have 6 miles of hiking trails that go through the actual encampment. Everything's well marked. We have different sites that are signed with new interpretive signs that went in a couple years ago, and then everything else is labeled as you're going through. Having worked there so long, you get a real affinity for the people who are actually there. And everybody's heard of Valley Forge and the amazing amount of suffering that they had. With Washington had 12,000 people there. He lost about 2,000, give or take, rough figures. Excuse me. But Valley Forge is only like 20 miles from Philadelphia. It was the biggest city in the colonies at the time. And in reality, there was a lot of food around. There was a lot of population around. Unfortunately, the Continentals didn't have scrip to pay for it, so most of these farmers wanted money. But there was still a lot around. And at Mount Independence in Fort Ticonderoga, which is a complex there was about 12,000 people there, between 12 and 13,000 people there in the fall of 1776. And when the winter came in, most of those people had gone home. We're down to about 3,000 or 4,000 roughly, and that's a saying 5,000 is really generous. The nearest supply base is in Albany. Now you can imagine what it was like trying to get supplies all the way up from Albany to Lake Champlain in the wintertime. And we estimate, and I'm probably, it's a conservative estimate, between 12 and 1,500 people passed away at the Mount. Now I'm saying 5,000 people there. There were units coming in and out all the time. Some would go home, some would come in. And the death toll was just horrendous. Poor food, accidents, the weather conditions, poor clothing, you name it, it was there. It was a horrible place. But it's just one of these, if you get to get the feel of the place, like I've been for the last 20 some years, it's fascinating to realize what these guys went through. And that's when I started doing research many years ago, and came up with the idea to do this diary.
Memoirs of Isaac Kendall. Is Isaac Kendall a real person, or is this a fictionalized person that kind of represents everything that you learned and studied about Mount Independence?
No, yeah, Isaac is not a real person.
Okay.
There are real people in the book, notably some of the officers' names that are mentioned. But Isaac and his contemporaries that he is with are all made up characters. The situations that they are in are real.
Okay. And so what first inspired you to kind of write a diary style novel of a Continental soldier then?
I would have to say I've been influenced by a couple other writers. I'm not comparing myself to Kenneth Roberts, but he's had a lot of influence on my take on history, because the historical novels that he wrote in the 1930s and 40s are classics and even studied today and still stand very well. the test of time. He died like 1954.
Wow.
But the first one of the first books I read was two of his trilogy, American Revolutionary War trilogy, where he goes up to Quebec, the invasion of Quebec City, and then the second one focuses on the retreat from that down to Saratoga battle. And reading that many years ago, I thought, what a wonderful way to understand this without, the trend when I was in high school and or in college was okay. This general went here. He did this. They moved the troops there. This is more like from the gut. This is what these guys did, and that seems to be the trend now. Is getting right into the trenches with the soldiers more so than they did in the past. So I thought by putting a character in the situations and really letting people know what it was like to be there rather than, okay, well, he moved here and he went there stuff. So that was.
So, what source of daily records did you use to kind of build Isaac's experiences?
Well, we have lots of excerpts from diaries, uh, clippings from newspapers. Pension records are really quite good because they mention, like, say, Bill Jones was with me, and he and I went here, and he was shot here, and so on, so on, and so forth. When they're trying to get pension records years afterwards, uh, they're available from the National Archives, so they work out really quite well. Writings from different individuals, some that have survived. One of the ones that's really quite telling is a Colonel Jonathan Baldwin's diary that he kept, and we actually have a copy of the diary at the Mount. It was a publishing house in New Hampshire that was publishing it for a few years, but they went out of business a few years ago. But it's a fascinating reading, and what he's talking about the day to day life. He was an officer, but he mentions what the enlisted men went through every now and then. It's just
Okay.
little bits and pieces here and there that come together.
Were there parts of Isaac's life you kind of struggled to convey in an authentically in a diary format?
Actually, not really. Um,
Okay.
the regiments that he came in, what I have him with Burrell's regiment that came in the spring of 1776, uh, as he was one of the replacements. The unit had been up in Montreal on the retreat, and these were replacements for the guys. So there was quite a bit of information on Burrell's regiment. They went home roughly in early January of 77, but then I have him going back to Connecticut, where he was from, and through different circumstances, you have to read the book, ends up in Portsmouth, and then ends up back at the Mount with a different unit, which again is well documented. This is Pierce Long's unit out of New Hampshire. So the units,
Okay.
a lot of the unit histories really came in handy, putting him in different situations.
Did any particular scene stand out that was kind of especially powerful for you to write?
Uh, Well, one of the ones that kind of sticks in my mind is Pierce Long's regiment when the Mount was abandoned in July of 1777, July 6th. They were entailed with taking the boat trip down to what's now Whitehall to Skenesboro, and they were in charge of escorting the women, children, invalids, and the sick, wounded,
Mm,
etc., down on this boat excursion, and they were partying. They had
mm.
Madeira, they had the boats, they had gotten away, and by the time they got to Whitehall, they didn't realize the British were pursuing. And barely 5 minutes after they got there, the British came around a corner, opened up fire, and all hell broke loose. So I thought that was quite an interesting piece that he would have gone through, and panic and everything else along with it.
How does helping write a fictional account of it's an historical piece of our geographic area? How does that help preserve Vermont's revolutionary past?
Well, I believe it'll open people's eyes as to what it was actually like to be there.
Mm,
It's amazing. We were just down at a history fair down in Hoosick, New York, and it was a joint affair between Hoosick history groups and Bennington and everything else. And I'm surprised how many people come up and say, "Well, where is Mount Independence?" These are Vermonters
mm.
and people from northern New York, and they don't know where it is. And just to be able to get more of of a notoriety for the place, which it really justly deserves, would be, a feather in my cap if it does happen.
Hmm. Can you share what people ask most when you present them this story?
Um, Most people want to know if he's a real person, which which uh, which is kind of good, because if they're getting the idea that he's a real person without reading towards the end where I explain, that's a good thing.
Hey. Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. And thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. What level of freedom were you able to get by writing about a fictional person instead of finding some notebooks or diaries of someone who actually existed, that was there at Mount Independence?
Well, I have the freedom to be able to put one person's experience together with another person's experience and make them into a composite person's experience, um, the shared experience, shall we say, that,
Right,
this guy did this and this guy did that, but I've got my character doing both, and so on
right,
throughout the whole thing.
right. Being a professor of history, what did you learn about history that surprised you while you were preparing and researching and putting this book together?
Well, that's a tough question to answer, because I'd have to say that I've been surprised for the last 20 years when I've been working there, the amount of stuff that's there. And we just recently finished a grant where we were cataloging artifacts, and we began photographing right after Thanksgiving in 2023, and just finished off it was right in August, towards the middle of August, when we finally finished with the grant, because we ran out of time and money, because we could still be photographing. There's so much stuff there. The magnitude and the amount of material that is at that site is mind blowing. And this
Right,
is stuff, because when the Americans left, they were not in a panic, but turned into a panic. When the British left, they were getting their supply lines cut, and they had to get back up to Montreal, and they just threw stuff in a lake. They wanted to get
Hmm.
out. So it's a time capsule, and uh, I can relate one particular piece. It gave me a whole new, what should I want to say, appreciation for the artillery guys, because
Hmm.
we were weighing and measuring and photographing round shot cannonballs, basically. And the first day we did it, I was picking them up, had gloves on, of course, picking them up, putting them on a place, and taking a photo of them, and we'd catalog it, write it down, and somebody else was doing that, and I must have handled 200-300 of those. I got home and I was sitting watching TV, and my wrist is sore. And I'm thinking, what the heck? Why is my wrist so sore? And then it dawned on me: I'm lifting up these 5, 6, sometimes 10, sometimes 2 ounce, sometimes any kind of round shot all day long. Well, I can't imagine doing that daily, every day, for your entire enlistment as an artillery person. So it gives you a
Wow.
whole appreciation for what these guys went through. My hand was sore for
Right.
just a little bit, but and the stuff is heavy. Drop it on your foot, you know. Just, and the food rations. Uh, Along those lines, with that grant I mentioned, we did 16 different videos, which are available, Mounted Dependence artifact videos, and
Mm.
we had some pretty fantastic historians, friends of mine, who did pieces on muskets, canteens. I did foodways. We did wine bottles. We did all kind of pipe stems, all sorts of stuff like that, just to give people an idea of what the the common soldier used and would have been would have had while he was there. So
Right. Oh,
it's pretty
and
amazing study.
right. So you kind of mentioned it earlier. Why is it, our neck of the woods, like Fort Ticonderoga is more well known than even the Bennington Battle Monument, and so, well, I mean, that obviously is a monument, but why isn't as you mentioned, why isn't Mount Independence as well known as other historical landmarks?
That's a good question, and I don't have an answer for that except for the fact that Fort Ty was rebuilt in the early 19th century. I'm sorry, early 20th century. Excuse me. Uh, it's been a tourist attraction for a really long time, and I can honestly say, although people did go to the Mount, and even in the early 1800s, we knew people were up there picnicking. It wasn't until the bicentennial years that the trails went in, and it just hasn't had the following. I mean, we don't have a big stone fortress.
Mm.
And of course, the people across the lake have this really, really great. They do a really, really great job over there. I really do. I'm not taking anything away from them, but they got this really great stone fortress, and it's impressive.
Mm.
We don't.
My other question then, Paul, is are you considering more historical fiction set in Vermont now?
Actually, I've written another piece that I have just recovered through a series of misplacements, and it's actually in a 3.5 floppy. That's how old it is.
Huh.
It's a Civil War piece that I researched many years ago, and I literally just recovered it a few months ago, and I'm trying to get it into a printable and format at this point. I have it, but I got to separate everything, go through it all over again. Oh, it's been
Okay.
gone for I don't know how many years. So, but that's actually a person from up around your neck of the woods who was desperately wounded in the around the Winchester area at the Opequon in it would have been summer of 64 rather, and was left to
Okay.
die and was taken in by a sympathetic Southern family and nursed back to health.
Okay.
He's a Union soldier, and that's a really
Oh.
interesting story. And I won't get into that anymore. We'll have to wait for that to get published.
So, what advice would you give other authors who are looking to kind of write historical diary style fiction?
Wow. Well, I would say no, I'm not going to use the word be creative, but realize that your audience might crave simplicity, shall we say? I mean,
Mm.
I can get into reading stuff like in the Second World War about where Patton may have driven through this city and everything, and so on and so forth, and what he did. But I'd be more interested what Joe Schmo's doing on the ground to get
Mm.
the feel for what it was like to be there.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
And so Paul, if people want to learn more about you and or your book, where is the best place they could go to?
Well, okay. I'm doing a program at Mount Independence. I think it's on the 27th of July. And we're doing a program where I'll be talking about my book there. Um, the Hubbardton Battle reenactment is coming up the weekend after the 4th of July. And I know I'm going to be there on Saturday. I don't know about Sunday. I haven't got my schedule for Sunday yet, but I'll be there then. Or just stopping at the Mount anytime. I work there Saturdays and Sundays, and usually Friday every other Friday. But Hubbardton, but I'm there, so stop in and visit.
Perfect. All right. Oh, this has been fantastic, Paul. And listen, you're gonna have to come back on when you get your next book out. Then.
I will be happy to. It's
All
been fun.
right. All
Hmm.
right. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, you're